what is up YouTube? Welcome to today's video, and we are going to go over why Crucible League is the best and worst league of all time. Now, this has been something that I've seen constantly on Reddit regarding why Crucible League has such crazy good player numbers, yet everyone is complaining about the league. Now, there can be two things that are true at the same time, which is that the core game is really good, yet Crucible League is really bad. However, that doesn't really fully explain the picture of why there are so many new players. So we're going to go over all of the data just so we can clear it up and I can give a little bit of my own thoughts about Crucible League and what I actually enjoy and dislike about the league. Now, first off, Diablo 4 beta happened right before Crucible League, and that is something that you should really keep in mind because it is probably the most important factor in all of this retention or player peak for Crucible League. Now, Sanctum did turn out to be one of the best leagues ever for retention, even beating out Ritual League by the end. So a lot of people enjoy Sanctum, and I do think a large portion of that is because of the removal of Arch Nemesis. Tons of people hated Arch Nemesis. It felt awful. It was not fun. It made just doing a regular map with some rare monsters feel like a life or death experience similar to an Uber boss. It was terrible. Now, in the trailer, Crucible also introduced a league mechanic that looked amazing. It featured monsters inside of the map, and everyone was super hyped about Crucible because this was going to be the first league in a very, very, very long time that actually featured monsters inside of the map. Now, there were a lot of new players from Diablo 4, and I just found this thing right here kind of funny. New player perspective. Took 200 hours for me to become bored / frustrated of trade. Annoying that there's no marketplace, takes ages to list, and feels like a waste of time in general, right? So even a new player really identified one of the core issues with PoE right away. Now, what were the initial launch numbers for Crucible like? Well, they were downright amazing. I mean, I don't even know how else to put it. It surpassed all expectations. It crushed any previous league in terms of player peak. It set records on both Steam and overall player count. Now, these are the numbers for Steam charts for Steam. So you can see right here, on Steam, there was 209,000 players. And even at its most popular peak back in the day in Ritual League, it was only at 158,000. So they completely demolished it by over 30%. And that is really, really nice to see because one of the things that's been happening in PoE is that every single league has not really increased the player base, right? It feels like that Path of Exile has kind of stagnated in the sense that we can't really gain any more new players, so it is nice to see that this finally happened. Now, for a lot of people wondering, what is the percentage of people playing on Steam versus the standalone client? Well, here we have a very clear-cut answer. Path of Exile Crucible has hit a new record of 321,000 players. So roughly 67% of players play on Steam or around there. And it's very, very interesting to see that because a lot of people are kind of disillusioned. They think that there's a lot more players on the standalone client, but that's just not really the case. So great to see that Path of Exile got so many new players, and really it brings down the question, why was the launch so great? Now, the launch was great. I forgot to mention the servers were really stable. However, the trade site did suffer some major problems. A lot of people had trouble actually finding items to buy because the trade just simply was not working. Now, why was the launch so great? And I do think almost all of this could be attributed to two main factors, which was a lot of people stopped playing PoE because they got sick of Arch Nemesis and they really liked what they saw from Sanctum. They saw that the community really liked Sanctum League. Now, second was Diablo 4 beta. Now, I do think that a lot of new players tried out Diablo 4 beta and they kind of liked the genre. They're like, there hasn't been a new big ARPG in the last 10 years, right? I think Chris Wolfson or whatever that game is called, Wolfson, or like Torchlight maybe, but there hasn't been a AAA ARPG developed in a very, very long time. So it's kind of a forgotten genre outside of Path of Exile. And for a lot of players, Path of Exile just looks a little bit too intimidating. It's also not made by a publisher that people are really used to. Like, most people have no idea what grinding gear games even is, but every single person knows what Blizzard is, for good or bad, right? Even though Blizzard's reputation is tarnished, Diablo is a massive, massive franchise. A lot of people played it when they were younger, and it attracts a larger and more casual player base that would never give PoE the light of day. Now, a lot of these people tried out Diablo 4 beta. They were like, oh, I want to play another ARPG, and what better ARPG to play than the industry-leading Path of Exile, and that is exactly what happened. I know countless new players that actually told me they started playing the League after trying out the Diablo 4 beta, and a lot of people say it in my chat. A lot of my friends have also said it, that they finally gave the game a chance because of Diablo 4. And lastly, there's one last thing I forgot to mention, is that the hype for Path of Exile 2 has slowly started to build. I think with ExileCon around the corner, a lot of people want to check out the game again just to see if anything has changed since they last ditched it. And these were the dates for the Diablo 4 beta. So you can see it was actually like right around the corner within like 2 to 3 weeks before when PoE 2 or Path of Exile launched. Now, for the total retention, and this is a thing that a lot of people bring up, in terms of total player retention, Crucible League has the most players ever at the 3-week mark, barely edging out Ritual. And this chart on the right, as you can see, is the Crucible chart, or the total players chart. So for this, you can see right here, Crucible started with a bunch of players way higher than Ritual, Sanctum, and Kalandra. And now by week 3, Ritual has a lot better retention percentage-wise, but Crucible still has more players. And compared to Sanctum and Kalandra League, Crucible League honestly just blows it out of the water. Now, for the thing that someone else wants to really look at when you analyze the data, it's the percentage, because percentage means a little bit more. Because if the total number is higher, of course, it's going to probably be higher in the total amount of concurrent players. Now, percentage-wise, Crucible has not really done that great. It is lower than both Sanctum and Ritual League. However, it's still higher than Kalandra League. But this is kind of to be expected. You can't really expect all of these new players to still be playing Path of Exile 3 weeks down the line. And I do think that most new players probably didn't even finish the campaign. And so I don't really think that the percentage-wise it matters that much. Like, it is expected to be lower. It'll be actually an astonishing success if percentage-wise Crucible League was the highest too, while also having the highest amount of peak concurrent players. Now, why is the percentage retention not better? And this really comes down to the fact also that I think that Crucible League is one of the worst league mechanics GGG has ever put out. And Crucible League, and most like experienced players who play the game a lot, they think of Crucible League as a glorified standard league. Monsters do not drop loot. That's probably one of the biggest issues right now. And actually the biggest issue is the channeling still takes an eternity in maps. It does not feel fun to channel the Crucible for 10 seconds and then fight these monsters that are super, super overtuned that drop absolutely nothing for a chance at using a glorified Wisdom Scroll to find a Crucible tree on an item that out of 100 times, most of the times, like 99 times, is going to be something bad. So that's one of the main reasons why Crucible League is really terrible in terms of its reward structure, how it feels to play. But the best part about Crucible is definitely the player power you get from the weapons. There are a lot of different new builds that came out of it. You can see all of these builds on the right side here with these explode totems. There's so many different explode totem variants. There's poison artillery ballista. There's spectral shield throw with the new busted Emperor's Vigilance with the Crucible tree. And I do think that we have to separate the fact that the base game is amazing, yet Crucible League is, in my opinion, one of the worst league mechanics ever made outside of the player power. And I do think that outside of Bestiary or Talisman League, Crucible League is way up there in the pantheons of worst playing league mechanics of all time. However, players do have a lot more power, and I think that power also translates to the ability to make a little bit more variety in builds. I also think that another problem in Crucible, and this is more of a general problem, is that there's a lack of endgame farming methods that really appeal to people who want to completely juice out their maps. And part of this is due to the removal of the Infinite Compass Harvest Sextant. So this compass right here generated a lot of winged scarabs that allow people to run a high-end mapping strategy without really ever worrying about having to buy more compasses on the trade site. But a lot of the staleness in the endgame farming is due to the fact that PoE has not seen an endgame expansion in a very, very long time. And that is because a lot of the content is being saved for PoE 2. We are entering a golden era for ARPGs with Diablo 4, Last Epoch, and PoE 2. So there's going to be a lot of different choices, and I hope that PoE is going to be able to learn from other ARPGs and perhaps copy some of the good points. Like I saw Diablo 4 recently had an option to skip the campaign after you have done it once, but with GGG's love of the campaign, I don't think that's actually going to happen. And the best part is that the game is going to feel more vibrant and alive because there's going to be more new players. And I think that's actually one of the biggest things, is that having the player peak increase after all these years of stagnation is one of the best parts. It's nice to see a lot of new players hop in. Nice to see a lot of people trying to learn the game and not be completely jaded by some of the problems. And it's really enjoyable to see people who have true enjoyment of the game because they haven't really grasped all of the concepts of it. And I do think that ExileCon will have the Path of Exile 2 release day. And lastly, probably do not read too much into the retention numbers. They're kind of meaningless without context, especially when you look at the total numbers versus the percentage. But let me know down in the comments below what you think about Crucible League and what you think about the base game. Do you think it's an unfair assessment to say that Crucible League is one of the best leagues, yet one of the worst leagues at the same time? But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you find more Mirrors, Divines, and Magebloods than me, and see you next time. Bye!